I've been thinking a lot about time lately. Time to write and read and work and cook and walk and shop and play video games, but also time to watch movies. Time to commit to sitting down for 2+ hours, to shutting everything else out, to giving a film your undivided attention so that it can have the impact it was meant to have. So, what happens when a movie comes along that demands a little bit more? Whether it's time or patience that it's demanding from you, there are many, many films that have deterred a fair share of audiences because of some element of slowness or prolonged length. I don't have time for this, or I don't have patience for this, might be the thoughts that keep people from watching films like Killers of the Flower Moon, Jean Dielman, or the slow cinema filmographies of directors like Ming-liang or Michelangelo from Martino. It's an understandable complaint to an extent. I'm no stranger to putting off watching a film because of its length or its pace, but when I do sit down to watch these films or engage in these experiences, they turn out to be some of the most enriching cinematic experiences I've ever had. So if you've ever thought to yourself, why have I been staring at the same still shot for over a minute? The goal today is to genuinely answer that question and hopefully make a case for why that's a worthy use of your precious time. In other words, this is why sometimes movies need to be long. To start, what do I mean by long? When I think of a long movie, the first thing that comes to mind is two shots from Taiwanese slow cinema master Ming-liang's Stray Dogs. The shots are near motionless for most of their duration. The first lasts 13 minutes and 45 seconds, and the second lasts for exactly 7 minutes, for a running total between the two shots of 20 minutes and 45 seconds for one scene in which very little actually happens. This is what I would call long, because it actively feels long. I bet most people would agree. I think many people would call Stray Dogs a longer movie than the 3-hour Avengers Endgame, despite the fact that, in reality, Stray Dogs is 43 minutes shorter, coming in at a fairly standard length of 2 hours and 18 minutes. We'll dive deeper into these two shots a bit later, but first I want to dig a little deeper into why the shorter film elicits more complaints about length than the longer one. In 2011, there was much fuss made over a New York Times piece by Dan Coys titled "Eating Your Cultural Vegetables," in which he complains that he has tried and failed to enjoy long, slow movies, but has reached the conclusion that he simply finds them too boring and is less uninterested in watching them anymore. As I get older, I find I'm suffering from a kind of cultural fatigue and have less interest in eating my cultural vegetables, no matter how good they may be for me. I suspect many people might empathize with this. There's nothing inherently wrong with admitting you tried and failed to like a certain kind of film, especially when that film is as slow as Stray Dogs. It's normal to react by saying you just didn't connect or that it felt too long, too slow. That's your genuine response, and there are likely reasons you responded that way. It happens to the best of us. The issue is when someone goes on to imply that people who do enjoy these kinds of films are pretending or are playing it up, or as the late David Bordwell put it in his response to Coys' piece, mere posers. This is stubborn ridicule, not an attempt to wish you understood. Bordwell understands this, attempting to articulate where this feeling that something is too long or too slow might come from for many viewers. He writes in his wonderful blog post on the topic, Good and Good for You, that the fact that cinephiles must face is that this sort of film is very difficult to talk about. We can point out the creative choices in Hollywood because narrative in some degree drives everything we see and hear, but when narrative relaxes, most viewers don't know what to look or listen for. This is why Stray Dogs might feel longer than Endgame. Endgame is longer, but it is 3 hours of consistently narrative-driven filmmaking and storytelling with quick continuity editing and shots that exist primarily to progress the story of the film. Everything is in service of narrative. When you take that away and are left with 20 minutes where the only narrative progression is that a man hugs a crying woman while she looks at a mural, then the woman walks away, then the man looks at the mural, then the man walks away, that doesn't take 20 minutes to look at. So what are you doing with the rest of that time? Sitting and staring, thinking, maybe. More on that soon, but the point is that most viewers don't know what to do with that time. So that time feels incredibly long and incredibly slow. Again, it's a normal response to feel that way or even to feel troubled by it. But rather than ridiculing, like Koi's, those who look at these scenes and see something beautiful, I propose that it might be more worthwhile to ask why other people seem to enjoy these things. Why shouldn't people follow Koi's in giving up their vegetables? No reason, except that they're missing some worthwhile cinematic experiences. Not all austere movies are good, but viewers who want to expand their cinematic horizons should consider the possibility of learning to look at certain movies differently. Koi's can't see that. He thinks people who like the movies that bore him are usually phonies. But I believe that some of those admirers have developed a repertoire of viewing habits that adjust to different cinematic traditions. If you can like both Stravinsky and rock and roll, why can't you like Poe and Spielberg? Bordwell, good and good for you. So, enough about Koi's. Let's answer the question you came here to get an answer to. Why do some movies need to be long? To get to the heart of this, let's learn how to, quote, look at certain movies differently. If we return to Stray Dogs, the immediate question is why we need 20 minutes to go through 4 very simple plot beats. To the average viewer, that's a mind-bogglingly long time to spend on such simple actions. I would propose, however, that you give the film a chance to justify it. I personally believe that it does. Just take a second to slow down. Consider the image. Speaking to the phenomenon of engaging with a shot like this, A.O. Scott and Manohla Dargis for the New York Times write, "Long movies take time away even as they restore a sense of duration, of time and life passing, that most movies try to obscure through continuity editing. Faced with duration, not distraction, your mind may wander, but there is no need to panic. It will come back. In wandering, there can be revelation as you meditate, trance out, bliss out, luxuriate in your thoughts. Think. And there's so much to think about, buried within this image. Even without the context of the rest of the film, we see a man staring aimlessly into a beautiful mural, not quite knowing what to look for, but nonetheless looking onward. The mural depicts an idyllic countryside landscape, the greens and natural beauties within being starkly contrasted by the dilapidated building it sits within. Listen closely. Cars roll by on the highway, caught up in the city noise. They don't know this mural is here, depicting what once was. And they don't know there's a man here who has been forgotten by society, left to stare at an empty representation of what once was, as he stands within a broken building that played a key part in destroying that landscape. The city outside is moving on without him, just as it moved on from this building, just as it moved on from this time when things were beautiful. Now we fight for scraps in a field of leftovers, like, as the title of the film implies, Stray Dogs. What a sad, lonely thought. It's no wonder they stood there for so long, crying, thinking, wanting, knowing, leaving. And duration is what allows us to see all of this, rather than shoving us along to the next plot progression. This, I think, is much more substantial. It's hard to get to the point of experiencing this, however. As Constance Grady puts it, what if we simply don't know how to pay attention any longer? Well, it's all about, as Bordwell suggested, learning how to look at movies differently or finding new things to pay attention to. After all, slow movies let us look around, and good slow movie makers give us something to see when we do. I hope I already proved as much with the shot from Stray Dogs. You could look at the architecture, the soundscape, the textures, the colors. You could closely analyze each and every aspect of the picture being presented to you, and you might just start to connect the dots until you understand, on some deeper level, how the moment being presented to you is informing the message of the film. It's duration that lets you do this. As Matthew Flanagan wrote amidst growing academic studies of slow cinema, during long takes, we are invited to let our eyes wander within the parameters of the frame, observing details that would remain veiled or merely implied by a swifter form of narration. By slowing down and taking some of the focus off of the basic narrative whats of the story, you have time to let things sink in and consider the hows and whys, even whens and wheres, that might not have occurred to you. These filmmakers become engaging, even entertaining, when we realize that they are to some extent shifting our involvement from characters and situations to the manner of presentation. Not narrative, but narration is what engages us. The more you practice seeing these things and thinking about these things, the more fun you might have watching long, slow movies as a whole. It'll open up a whole new world of cinema for you, if only you give the film a little patience as you learn how to look at it differently. This extends, of course, to movies that are very literally long as well. Movies that gain their length by virtue of taking their time and resisting the go tendencies of contemporary cinema by showing patience in their storytelling and an unwillingness to let you go too soon. Killers of the Flower Moon is a great example of this. It might not be slow cinema, but it certainly feels long in the way that slow cinema might, by way of its sheer length and lack of Marvel or Avatar level blockbuster distractions. For audiences who felt challenged or turned off by the film's length, requesting an intermission to make it more bearable, Martin Scorsese had a very clear statement for them, clarifying that the fact that the film feels long is quite intentional. Quoting him for Slate, Sam Adams writes, "Scorsese, whose movie addresses an especially noxious episode in American history, dared to be sincere. I say to the audience out there, if there is an audience for this kind of thing, make a commitment. Your life might be enriched." The reason there's no intermission in Killers of the Flower Moon isn't because Scorsese wants to try his audience's patience. It's because the movie concerns a string of brutal, racist murders, and the violence needs to feel both mundane and unrelenting. An intermission is an escape valve, and you shouldn't be able to escape. Elsewhere, much has also been said about the immense length of the Lord of the Rings extended editions, 4-hour behemoths of films, elongated from films that were already quite bulky. Writing about why she prefers these extended versions over the originals, Elle Kuiper calls attention to the slow moments where the films are allowed some room to breathe. Those brief moments of respite from the fighting, during which characters reflect on legend and myth and the things and places and people that they love, are what make it feel so real, lived in, and above all, genuine. I suspect this is because at the end of the day, slow films, long films, these are the kinds of films that reflect the way the world can often feel. Even when life is crazy busy and it feels like you're constantly running out of time, there are those moments where you stand in the shower for 10 minutes doing nothing just because you need that time to recharge and feel like a human. Is it so bad for a film to reflect that? If anything, that's what can make a film feel real. It reminds me of a Bella Tarr quote that Flanagan quoted in his piece. "The people of this generation know information cut, information cut, information cut. They can follow the logic of it, the logic of the story, but they don't follow the logic of life." I'd argue that maybe our generation does follow the logic of life. We all have those moments where we need to slow down and breathe, but that logic doesn't always extend into the way we watch movies. If you treat a movie less like a piece of entertainment and more like an artful reflection of life, or something that is trying to say something genuine and make you feel something genuine, maybe then you can see the logic of life in cinema too. Personally, I think that's a beautiful thing. I hope you do too, so that next time you watch a long, slow movie, you know what to look for to have an experience that no other cinema can provide. I promise the patience can be worth it. Thank you for watching. I really enjoyed making this video, and if you liked it, please consider liking, subscribing, commenting. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I think something I want to accomplish with this channel is making discussions like these about more niche areas of film studies a bit more accessible to a broader audience outside of film school and outside of the industry. So if these things interest you, let me know, and I would love to do more videos like this. Thank you very much, and I'm going to shut up now.